Hello, and welcome to part 2 of the journey of my philosophical journey. Right, so bit of a different circumstance. Rather than me talking to you first thing as I roll out of bed, drinking a gallon of coffee, I'm on my way back home now from work, so you might have a little bit more of a tired mind, but see how it goes. Always something a little bit more interesting about speaking in the twinkling of the stars above, and you sit around the fires and all those kind of things. So maybe that's probably the thing we need. Anyway, so I was talking a bit about David Icke and how I was very enchanted by him. Definitely let off those thought grenades in my mind, which I want to fire off some myself one day. And there was... let me just get out of this bad situation. All right. The man was definitely a very is still to this day a very influential character, and definitely got me going in the thought exercise, and there was obviously the element of skepticism with regards to how he had certain theories which were a little bit far-fetched, and far-fetched is not a good explanation, but just not enough evidence to support the claims. So if you approach it in a scientific means, there was not enough evidence there for me to really validate what he was saying as totally true. Not to say that I really sort of was applying the scientific method to everything that David Icke would do, or to everything I do in life, and hotly pursue the truth. But there was just that little twinge inside me to say, I can't really go this far. So David Icke would have been the one that I would have kept on looking at, and I was always sort of from that perspective onwards, there's a little bit of sort of connections which go on from that point. There was like this this other YouTube channel called Camelot and Avalon, which were really like interesting sort of interviews with different people that had certain stories to tell about the Illuminati and the people from different galaxies, and there was a sort of a challenge and a struggle for the minds of the people, and there's a continuous little infighting war with the political parties, and there's a pyramid, and above the pyramid there's even further people that go up even higher, and it's a very enchanting sort of ideal. I remember one little story that just sort of captivated me once, where there was said that there was and these are very engrossing stories, but Yeah, there's a captivating story. One thing I would always mention is that when somebody, one thing I do notice that is that when somebody starts off the conversation with a load of filler, now I guess I probably have a little bit of filler, but just plenty of build up and suspense, and it does go on for a tremendous amount of time and not really much in the way of content. And it gets almost towards the end of the video or the podcast or whatever, and then you get a little sort of bit of something, and then you really there isn't in much to like work on with it. It's very, very vague, and you pretty much, like, anyone could have sort of conjured that up, and there's nothing really to factually base the story upon. You do find a lot of that kind of stuff, and once you sort of walk around those kind of little stories, if you are taken up and your mindset's taken up with the theory that there is this battle, and your mind is opened to the stories of what is being told you, and literally everything that has been spoken to you is true, then you're very susceptible to a lot of this stuff. It's not to say that a lot of it is. I mean, a lot of it is sort of. It's all just videos that have been put onto YouTube, so there may be a very tiny profit motive going on there, but yeah, so that sort of ties into the new age and like people that have got the holistic mind and all those kind of things. Now, yeah, one story that just captivated me once was there was this story where this is where it does get a little bit wild. There's a man who could meditate, and he could enter in. Sorry, there was this lady who was able to meditate and to enter into a sort of like in Eyes Wide Shut, sort of like an inner circle, sort of fantastic mansion palace where evil acts were happening and things like that. When this lady who could telepathically sort of envision what was happening, she noticed that there was another soul there, which was a priest, and this priest was trying to fight off this demon, but this demon was so powerful that this priest would never be able to actually fight off. I know it sounds a bit incredible by me mentioning it to you, but the way that it was spoken, it just really sort of it was very captivating as a story. And she sort of told them that this evil spirit was too much, and she will try and take it on, and that was her power, and things like that. And you get all of these stories, and obviously, how do you sort of I would just sit there, just listening to these stories, and they are just purely stories. But in my mind, I was thinking maybe these do, maybe these are telling me something. Maybe there is some kind of tiny segments of factual information which is being dropped off. Maybe of what I'm watching, if 90% is not true, then there may be 10% true. But then, where do you cross the line? You're in a very murky water of not really understanding much, and there's not really much in the way of no real grounding. So so I spent a lot of time on that kind of area of thought, which obviously makes you think that everything is a conspiracy. The 9/11 attacks is a pure conspiracy, which I'm definitely open-minded to the facts there is an inner circle of power structures within government systems, which, I mean, I guess there are obviously everybody's got some kind of person that they're subservient to. It wouldn't make sense, and obviously a politician has to be subservient to parties that fund it for their own political power, for their own political parties and stuff like that. So I mean, you got to question whether some stories are just piggybacking on the back of other stories just to get a hook on you. You do, if you do listen to like the truths that are revealed by David Icke, there are definite connections between one person to another, and after a while, when you see all these connections, it does sort of make you think a lot and in depth about these things. But when you're just sitting in a room, just thinking about all of these power structures and all that kind of stuff, what practical tools can you utilize from that, other than thinking that the world is corrupt and there's nothing that you can do about it? And well, I guess they do obviously have this theme that you are a lot more powerful than what they've told you to be, and that again is fairly true. But the problem is the truth is a little bit more not as sort of magical as what you seem it is. You are all powerful, but the empowerment only lies in you. Really, it's not really the suppression and the drugs in our food and the aeroplane spraying chemicals in the air. It's the suppression is within ourselves, and it's things that we can motivate ourselves to change. So that can be very deceptive to one's mind. If you think that you are all powerful and an incredible being which has got telepathy and amazing strengths, and you should never have things like cancer, and it's all a conspiracy. It's almost it makes you. It makes everything fanciful and almost insane, because you go down to any sort of mental health ward. The first sign of insanity is to believe in something that is not true, or believe in not necessarily God, because a lot of people believe in God, but to believe in sort of a person that is speaking to you, giving you orders, all of those things. There's like the schizophrenia that occurs in people. People are giving them orders and commands. They feel like that they're a god. They're all empowering. It's fairly dangerous stuff, and you're in a very murky water of being susceptible to not really knowing oneself and really obtaining the proper tools to understanding truth to falsehood. So yeah, that's where we go into the sort of the conspiracy theory phase of my mind. Very interesting, very exciting, and every step of the way, it really just is like it's better than watching a movie. Sometimes you sit there and you're engrossed by it, and it's amazing, and it makes you feel amazing as well, because it thinks that because the suppression is happening from somewhere else, so it's not necessarily you that's your problem which you need to overcome, but it's something else which is occurring in the sky, which is happening, which is one of the tricks which a lot of suppression any sort of like governments like to do as well, is that it's not your fault that you can't get these jobs. There's the system's corrupt and all of those kind of things by leftist sort of communist parties like to do that against capitalism and things like that. So yeah. I was consciously aware of what was going on, but riveted by the conspiracy theorists as well. So there was that part of my trail of thought, and then there's definitely some other missing pieces here, but I do think there was a time I was just thinking, okay, right, so, and this is just me just thinking out aloud. And it's interesting that I come over this point, that I was thinking throughout ages we have been fairly static, and we pretty much, like through like the medieval ages, we just didn't really invent much. There wasn't many sort of scientific improvements. The world didn't become a better place, and everything was just very slow, and you was dealing with illnesses and plagues and wars, and it was just an endless battle. And then something happened in terms of an age of enlightenment, where an absolutely explosion of inventions occurred, and we industrialized and created amazing machinery that revolutionized the planet, and we adopted the use of oil to run cars and engines and aeroplanes, and created computers and all of those sort of amazing things which occurred. And at this point, this is where I think I always had this little inclined anyway, is that I thought that this is something that we actually require ourselves, and this is technology. If you ever look at a civilization, if you look through all the years of time, a civilization is pretty much measured upon its technology. Very, very dangerous thing. A trail of thought, which I'll explain on a little bit later. But if we just decided that technology was the goal, and we just scrapped all of these ideals of corporations and all that kind of stuff, and we just literally just focused all our powers into engineering and science, and literally that was the grade that you would be, and you'd literally just come out of school, and you could directly, or you'd almost be directly in the system, where you would be an apprentice straight away, and you'll be working on major projects, and these projects would be centrally run by a system which decided on what was the greatest good for the society as a whole at that point in time. And obviously, as you have more resources in any respect, that society can select that at will, and then go for that attainable goal. So maybe like the first goal would be to have an energy source which was renewable and a lot cheaper, and enabled us to be free of fossil fuels. Maybe it would be to eradicate cancer, or the ability to stop the signs of aging, or been able to accomplish interstellar flight, or terraform the planet, the moon, and the solar systems, and then go beyond that point. All of these attainable goals would be a meteoric sort of rise in our civilization, and if we all pursued the greater good goal in achieving these items, then we would find the ending meaning of our civilization and things like that. So it's fairly sort of interesting, and you can sort of see how you could connect the dots in that sort of that world. And that's didn't really realize that I was falling down the little walk of the of the communists. And obviously once you started, I knew this as well. Obviously, once you start studying a bit about communism, you notice that the system didn't work. There's a lot of failures in the past, a lot of deaths, a lot of people queuing up for bread. Something must have happened at some point there. So I was a little bit unsure of myself, but never really my arguments never really got that confronted, really. And I guess that's a little bit of a danger when people can't throw in as many shots at your theory that you start believing that this is good and things like that. And you do need people that, especially when you are firing out theories out there, it's really good to have people that can just throw in those questions and start deducting the validity of your political theory. So that was that thought, and this has been quite funny. I started going on YouTube videos and stuff like that, and I noticed the Masons, and they said, "Oh, the Masons were," and I watched this very funny video of this man in sort of a little old, I don't know, Edwardian suit or something, mentioning about how the Masons were part of the Age of Enlightenment and things like that. So I was just trying to find some kind of source of what the Age of Enlightenment would have, what was the cause of it, how was it happening, how was it coming into motion, those kind of things. So I did actually just mention to go up to join the Masons, and they were very they sent me an email back straight away just saying, yeah, we were always interested in sort of building our memberships. And then I just read up more and more and about how you've it's like you might be joining some kind of cult system and you've got to pay a lot into the system, and I just wasn't in the financial means and all those kind of things to actually even join or entertain the thing. And I think I'll be just sitting in a hall room doing a fair few weird little speeches and not really understanding the essence of what occurred in the Age of Enlightenment. So sort of dissatisfied me straight away, really, once I got a response. Then still floating around for ideas, and here where you get a really interesting man, which would be like Alex Jones, which you start to I would start to uncover a few of his videos, and you would see the passion and the rage in him and how he would speak. And again, he would drop off a lot of the words, and he does interweave with the conspiracy theorist sort of ideals, but you feel sometimes, because he's got that Texan voice, that he's just one of those sort of southern sort of crazy types, but he's definitely not. He's very switched on, and you can tell that he does a lot of research into things. And I guess again, this is, as always, there is a certain percentage which may be coming through as true, and there's a certain percentage that may be false. But he, again, very riveting, and he's the sort of essence of the political motion, which I'm sort of very comfortable with comfortable with in general. I think the principles work out, and he's being a libertarian as well. So just hearing his ideals and his mind speak, bit scary on certain things where you think, my gosh, if this is all true and immunizations are bad and all those kind of things, then we're in some crazy world. But it's interesting just to listen to the man, especially like I remember one thing about gun control and things like that is very, very good, and he pours. I get the problem obviously that you get sometimes is he does pour on the fuel of emotion and stuff, and he isn't necessarily. He will put forward good arguments, but he doesn't necessarily always do that, and he will use crazy amounts of monologues, and I guess I'm always monologue, but a crazy amount of like monologues and like diatribes and how this is all going wrong and things like that, and you do feel like there's a little bit of it's the weirdest thing, and maybe even it's the strange word to use is indoctrination, where you just like there's that, and it's just a little bit of a chant that goes on in your mind. So again, good speaker, does sort of was doing it for me, but not necessarily was well, not when I say answer, but not necessarily sort of homing in any sort of thoughts of my own. It was sort of I'm getting newscasts of different things, and it's not really switching on my own mind, which when I say that, I mean I'm just saying that there was definitely a lot of revealing, mind-changing sort of like things that they were mentioned to you, and it will definitely give you different perspectives all the time about how to perceive the world that you live in, and that is a very important thing to gain and get a theory on. But in the realms of how to think, not necessarily anything was happening there, and that was maybe that was the same thing that was just tricking me a little bit there, and I wasn't quite as much as I found it very riveting. All of the newscasts. You get so much content from Alex Jones that you can't sort of take it all in, and there's a lot of big sort of speeches. But one of his guests actually that did captivate me was Stefan Molyneux. Very, very interesting character, and the way that he's so eloquent in the way that he spoke, and consistent and keeping to the facts, and within the realms of possibility and understanding. Just bang, bang, bang. He was firing out truth bombs left, right, and centre on an interview, and it was like rapid fire. You couldn't believe how quick this man's mind was working, which was of great interest to me, because this man definitely had something to say. So with that, I just started to look the man up, and he was an internet philosopher, and he had multiple podcasts, and as I just went from one podcast to the other, some recent stuff which he did and went over, but he literally offered all the greatest tools of how to apply the mind, how to deduce correct thinking, trying to understand truth from falsehood, applying the I think one of the most important things which he does, he brings everything down to the principles of yourself. So he always mentions about the evils which occur inside the house and the family, and how evil acts happen and occur when you apply it to your own children. He very good at spotting these things that you wouldn't necessarily foresee, and you could, and obviously he sort of uncovers the realms of society, culture, and at every stage there's a consistency to what he brings. There are areas where you think, okay, maybe we're pushing the realms of possibility here, where he comes to the conclusion by, and this is another one, the sticking to a principle and applying it universally. That's amazing stuff, which all these little different tools which are fantastic for a thinker's mind. So one of the sort of areas that he can be controversial on is to live in a state of anarchy, which I think is probable and possible. There's a dangerous anarchy, which is the leftist anarchy. Which in essence sort of needs control in the end, unless you can live in a community there which all agrees by the communist ideals. But it's a free market capitalism economy, and once you drive in the ideals of the free market, and going back to when I was saying what, like, the Age of Enlightenment and how America came from nothing to being something amazing, and all those kind of things, there were definitely things that were just kicking into my mind, and the message of liberty and how the free market was the thing which enables us to transfer wealth, have amazing prosperity, to improve the lives of everybody else, but rather than just shrinking the state down to the smallest levels of just a tiny minuscule state, his ideal is to, well, not ideal, but just his principle, which is applied consistently, which would be a pure voluntary environment where nobody had the rule of force applied to them. So in a sense, taxation is a act of force, because it occurs without the agreement to everybody. He believes to live in a pure free market society where everything is voluntary in the terms of living within the realms of capitalist trade without the government system. And once he applies that against the government system, and you sort of deduce that there is a lot of problems with that. Before I take that any further, anyway, there's also Peter Joseph, which is the Zeitgeist movement. He had, again, some amazing mind-exploding movies about a number of truths about religion, truths about where our society is heading. And he put forward, which, again, this is just before we went down the path of libertarianism, was the resource-based economy, which does very much tie in with my my own ideal of like a technologist sort of economy, where you have these centralized computer systems which would algorithmically control the amount of resources which could be distributed amongst its populace, to the correct level. But again, unless it would happen to be on a voluntary level, then there is the element of power, and then you do not have the you do not if you have the element of power involved, then you have corruption. People can be redistributed a bit more for some other things, especially when you've got the classic ideals of survive and reproduce. Because whenever there's an excess of power, you're going to push forward your own survival strategy and reproduction strategy, which might be just very tiny at first. You might just give away a couple of 3 items to this person and that person, but when any issues would occur, or whenever there's scarcity, which scarcity is a fundamental, then you have issues with that. And when there is greed, you have issues with that as well. So, and the market-based system has the correct, the free market-based system has the correct stabilizers in place to redistribute wealth in the correct manner, which is moral, by the purpose of a voluntary transaction of exchanging goods. So I mean, that's just my little thinking around the Zeitgeist movement. But if you can just create your own little independent city where you choose to make it resource based, then you've got a great thing going on. However, if you're trying to be resource based and trying to protect the environment, and then you've got like a dodgy state next to you which are polluting and driving everything, and like corporate greed in the eyes of just making pure turnover profits, then you've got a little bit of an issue there. So there's one good little argument I heard, is that if the Zeitgeist movement perceived that the humankind was killing its own self, then in the act of self-defense, would it be valid to enforce a resource-based economy? Which, again, using force against oneself, it does fight those. It does create a little bit of ambiguity in the mind, but you would have to ask the questions of how you come to that situation in the first place, and there's probably the power of the state which maybe been causing that itself. So Stefan definitely raised the torch for me, and is very highly influential in my methodology of thinking. I do hope that I am not just a soul that's been indoctrinated by one person to another, and I am independent of my own thought. So this is me taking those principles of philosophy, and I from that point I was looking at the philosophers in the past. We look at so once you open the gates of philosophy, then you've got all the nice, the historical characters. Socrates, the man who walks around the markets asking people questions: why do you do these things? What is bravery? What is greed? And falsifying different statements with people that think that they know these things, and then he fights against sophists, and then people follow him, and he ends his life by the state having a go at him, and he can argue against all the lawyers and the people that decide to throw him in, sentence to him to his death. Basically the story of Jesus. He's like the prequel of Jesus, but very interesting stories from that perspective. Then you have Aristotle, who was taught by Plato, in fact, who was taught by Aristotle, who wrote down all his books and his So you had Plato, who wrote all of the scenes and the acts with Socrates, and then this is the start of the academies and fantastic sort of ideas and messages got spelt around. Plato obviously had this little bit of an idea of philosopher kings being in control of the world, and he had a little bit of an idea of like how we perceive things in we have inbuilt in us the perception of perfect shapes, things like that, and he does go a little bit off the mark. But again, one of his proteges was Aristotle, which they say he is the philosopher, the one who is a scientist, applied thinking, truth, falsehoods, Aristotelian thinker. That's why you use that word. It sounds very fancy, but it's just to do with Aristotle. I always like the other one where this is another subject. He also taught Alexander the Great, and you do have this little connection of philosophers which go on a chain of throughout a chain of time. Once you do that, a little bit of application of philosophers. I do like a little bit of John Locke as well. The economists as well, I really enjoy. I do like Steve Keen. There's a few others. There's definitely a hell of a lot more others just Milton Friedman. There's who else has been? There's plenty more to mention. I'll cover economists a little bit more in greater depth in the future, but just to sort of track back as well, there was definitely a period of time in my life where I was very enthusiastic with politics, even prior to my ideals of how we should live in a futuristic technology sort of based world. One would be I would literally listen to Prime Minister's questions, always be avidly looking at the news, always continuously studying what was going on in current affairs, seeing how politicians were answering questions, and be really engrossed with how it was all played out. And the way I always perceived it was I found it like an amazing soap opera of real life, and how people would always be, because most politicians are like trained lawyers, but they're always trying to avoid the answers. You give them a question, they would beautifully avoid the question and answer it in a totally different way, and it would change your way of thinking. And I was always sort of impressed with the way that they could do those mind tricks with you, how they could do reveling speeches, how they could stand up and talk to people in rooms. I saw the power there as well, I saw them sometimes beholden to the people, but very rarely. And obvious a politician sort of was very interesting to me as well. I mean, I don't think I would have been. I wasn't that sort of taken up with running outside and joining a political party. I saw the problems with democracy even from that early age. How there was a lot of problems with democracy in itself. How I had 1,000 different ideas of how the country could be run differently, but still fairly naive. Didn't quite understand the ramifications of government debts and pensions and how systems and price discovery mechanisms were continuously manipulated. So it was very interesting from that perspective. So there's my mind thoughts. My mind thoughts. There's my sort of way of thinking anyway, and that's where it's sort of leaded me so far. Very interesting road I've been walking upon, and I do appreciate all the influences, even though some of them are a little bit more out of the box than others. I do appreciate all of them, and I hope that with the ideas and the tools that I have been provided with, I can add something again. As this, I think this is probably one of the first things that I outlined. Add something as, and it's in the title. Add something of value to somebody at some stage in their life that they can pursue the greater good. Oh yeah, obviously that's there's two major things with philosophy. Try to be virtuous, or be virtuous, not try, be virtuous, and so that's be a good person. And yeah, the pursuit of the truth, no matter how hard and harsh and emotional you want to be about the problem in hand, is the pursuit of the truth. And also with the virtue bit, you just got to just work your way within the mean of, if you're too kind, your kindness can be abused, and if you're too brave, you will be killed. But in general, trying to pursue virtues to the best of your ability to be the one who, if ever they see unjustness, to speak up, those kind of things. That is the ideal of a good philosopher, and they should be pursuing that at all times. Yeah, I think a philosopher should be a very sort of easy to understand person, puts forward good principles, theories and ideas. So yeah, this is where I try and tie in, and I hope that I can eventually at some point give something of weight and make some connection, make some sorry, I just got an awkward junction to get out of. Hate turning right. Yeah, so just to I know that is the word I've been trying to avoid. Change the world, but obviously for a positive sense, and for us to attain a greater level of happiness, because happiness is our end goal. if we can find anything else on the way, I'm a happy person. So that concludes our talk. Thank you very much for all your patience with me. I will continue the show, and I might continue this topic a little bit further at a later stage, but for now, I think I've covered a lot of the beginning and working all the way through cycles of my thought. There's a hell of a lot of more influences and things that have gone on over time, but I will try and pepper them in at some points in the future, and hopefully that will give you a little bit of an idea of where I'm coming from. Anyway, thank you for your time, and I'll be around again shortly. Thank you.